Spare Rations, Epochal Integration, Targeted Redaction, Combined Action, Nation of Beasts. Are they any good? Let's start with Spare Rations. The reports of its mediocrity are unfortunately not incorrect. The gun has returned with all of its original base stats completely unchanged, meaning it has the range, stability and handling of a 150 RPM in a 140 RPM's body. And just by looking at the perk pool, you know immediately that this is a very PvP focused hand cannon, with any combination of rapid hit, slide shot and moving target pairing well with opening shot, kill clip or swashbuckler. In-game, its performance felt remarkably similar to Die Promise, which I said in our hand cannon tier list feels sublime, but just couldn't compete due to its poor range and stats in general. Basically, it's been power crept to hell since it came out. I managed to get a slide shot and opening shot roll, and even with arguably the two most important perks for this gun to compete in the sandbox, it still didn't feel good enough. The low range meant that I was hitting high 60s for my damage far more often than I'd like, instead of the normal 70 crit damage. Whilst dueling, I found myself taking on a little too much flinch than I was used to thanks to its lower base stability. Perhaps it's a feel or a playstyle issue on my part, but when I died I just couldn't help but feel that Austringer would have been a better pick for that fight. Or Ias Luna. Or Rose. Or hell, even Fatebringer. Something that would definitely have made this compelling is if they made this a lightweight like Rose. The same frame it was as a 150. Instead, it's an adaptive with those stats. Outside of its fantastic feel, this hand cannon is very average at best, and unfortunately, mid at worst. Moving on to Epochal Integration. Using it is one of those things in life where the journey is more satisfying than the destination. It feels great using it, but it underwhelms massively in performance. Now this just has 4 perks: Keep Away and Eye of the Storm for PvP, and Stats for All and Incandescent for PvE. And in PvE, Stats for All helps to keep the experience consistent and reliable once you get it to proc, with the added stability helping keep your shots in check, and the boosted reload speed helping to keep the action going. But if I'm in the position to sell a weapon by saying, hey, Stats for All makes this gun feel good, we've got a bit of a problem here. The gun is best used with an ignition build with Ember of Ashes, since without it, the scorch stacks from Incandescent don't feel particularly impactful. The truth is, in underlevel content, it's really hard to recommend 140s because they just don't have a great damage profile right now. Hell, even in normal content, SMGs and sidearms are going to do this thing's job far better. It goes back to the harsh truth that there's no place for hand cannons in PvE, and Epochal Integration is doing nothing to dissuade this notion. You may want to keep it for Unstoppable Hand Cannon this season with solar shields, but aside from that, I can't think of a single good use case for this weapon. In PvP, Keep Away and Eye of the Storm are 2 welcome consistency perks that make using this weapon feel very smooth. Keep Away adds 10 range and 30 reload speed, whilst Eye of the Storm grants up to 30 extra handling as your health gets lower while shrinking your cones to help you land more shots. This makes the gun a little more versatile at many different ranges, and the nanotech rocket tracers are a nice cherry on top for a little added random damage during fights. It's not going to change your time to kill, but it's always more satisfying to see more damage pop up. But once again, I'm trying to justify the existence of this hand cannon by talking about the versatility of Keep Away? Really? My point is, whilst these perks are really good and they do feel good on this hand cannon, it's not taking it to the next level, and it's not elevating it out of where it is right now. As energy hand cannons go, it's a far cry from the likes of Exalted Truth and Palindrome, and more in line with Ancient Gospel from 2019. I guess if you're lacking a PvP hand cannon, this will do the job just fine, but it's the equivalent of buying a Keurig machine to get into coffee. Yeah, it's technically coffee, but onto Targeted Redaction. Void, Energy, 120 RPM, Craftable, and a killer set of perks for PvE. I was so ready to hate this thing. Worse stats than Bottom Dollar, nothing super compelling about it in PvP, and like I said before, generally speaking, hand cannons don't have a place in PvE. And yet, I just can't. It feels incredible, something that's owed no doubt to the Spare Rations profile that it's clearly been modeled after. The roles I've gotten have been Outlaw and Harmony, which is from the Season Pass, and Perfect Float and Frenzy. The latter role has been nothing short of fantastic. Not only does Frenzy provide a 15% damage boost, but it maxes out the handling and reload, which nullifies the 2 biggest downsides of using a 120 in the first place. What you're left with is a supremely capable weapon that handles very well, performs well on Neomuna, and absolutely sensationally everywhere else. But with any other 4th column perk, I'm not so sure I would be so generous with my praise because it's the max handling and reload that really sell the experience, more so than the damage buff. It does have destabilizing rounds as a roll option, but it won't matter if it takes like 5 seconds to empty the mag and 5 years to reload it. It's a good thing it's craftable because some of these other perks are worth playing around with. As Fallout has already demonstrated, this thing with collective action is headed for a nerf sooner rather than later in PvP, while shot swap or outlaw with explosive payload could be used as a rangy, off-meta nuisance. For people who struggle using hand cannon, you may want to consider the new perk Invisible Hand, which promises to boost your stability every time you miss a shot until you hit something. Think of it like training wheels for your hand. So overall, is this any good? I definitely say so. It's certainly interesting enough to want to get the patterns for it at the very least, and after that, play around with it, craft a few different roles, and see how you like it. Next up, Combined Action. This new world drop has a spicy roll right off the rip from Banshee, a tunnel vision kill clip roll that's spec'd for high stability, and from what I've experienced in PvP, I really like it, but it's not without its drawbacks. With Combined Action, we now have full light representation for 120 RPMs in Arc, Solar and Void, with this, Igneous Hammer and Bottom Dollar. Comparing their base stats sees Combined Action lose out pretty handily, but the perk pool is highly compelling. Zen Moment, Tunnel Vision, No Distractions are all excellent picks, whilst in column 4 we have Timed Payload, a first for an Energy 120, Kill Clip, Air Assault, and funnily enough Adagio, which does 2-tap everything, but it also drops your RPM down to 100. The combinations here are all really interesting, and it seems like one of those oddball weapons that will come to be loved by the select few, making it their own, especially on Arc subclasses. Also, despite 120s feeling terrible to use in enemy dense content, Volt Shot is a very interesting pick here, and could be a decent pick with Unstoppable Hand Cannon in GMs later this season. As for in-game, this weapon feels identical to Die Promise, but with a slower fire rate. The same gun model, same recoil animation, same sounds, which means mechanically it's very satisfying, but my opinion is no doubt influenced by the boosted 61 stability on my roll. That's really high for 120 in general, and as a result, I found myself able to duel pretty decently with it in PvP. Kill Clip for 2 taps at everything bar 10 resilience is never not satisfying as hell. My massive complaint really was with handling and reload speed, both easily manageable with exotics that help with that like Dragon Shadow or Ophidian Aspects, but in neutral combat it really felt a bit too low at 18 and 32 respectively. Without more rolls to test, objectively you kinda have to say the jury is out on this one, but from what I've experienced in PvP, I'm a believer. I don't think it will be terribly useful in PvE, but keep every roll with handling over 25 and stability over 40. Trust me, you'll like this weapon. No rating just as yet, but very promising stuff. Might be worth its own video if that's something you're interested in. Finally, Nation of Beasts. Not exactly a new hand cannon, but it has been reprised with the Last Wish raid, getting a new suite of perks and coming now as fully craftable. In the hand cannon not tier list, we placed this as good for its solid feel and overall performance. The stats, however, are unchanged, making this feel like the Forsaken era gun that it is. In column 3 we have Hipfire Grip, new for this season, Discord and Eddy Current, Keep Away, Dragonfly, Opening Shot and Perpetual Motion, whilst in column 4 we have Offhand Strike, Harmony, Collective Action, Golden Tricorn, Explosive Payload, Kill Clip and Volt Shot. For the kind of person that likes one weapon to do double duty in both PvP and PvE, if you really like the way Nation of Beasts feels, then you are absolutely going to love the fact that it's got great rolls for both sides of the game. Golden Tricorn is probably the pick of the bunch here for this season, as arc-based grenade builds got a huge boost with the artifact perk Lightning Strike Twice, boosting grenade regen. You pair that with Dragonfly and you're going to have an eye clear option that will handle just about anything. You might be tempted by Volt Shot, but since the damage from the Jolt inherits the weapon's combat damage scaling, a function of its base damage, don't be too surprised when it feels a little underwhelming. In PvP, Explosive Payload and Opening Shot is probably the move, but don't sleep on Discord or Perpetual Motion in that column either. Kill Clip is always just nice for less precision required, but it's not going to help you win your ones any faster. Is it any good? Well, stat comparison of other Arc 140s will tell you that its overall package is only better than Finite Impactor, which was rated in the bad category in our not tier list. But taking the overall perk package and the fact that it's craftable, I'd say it's interesting enough to have a look at when you've got nothing else going on. One for another time, perhaps. And that's it. Did this work for you? You know, just like taking the new loot and doing a quick and dirty review? Or would you much prefer individual, lengthier reviews? Sound off in the comments below and let me know if there's any other loot that you'd like me to cover. As ever, a huge shout out to our patrons for continuing to make these videos possible. I'm Ascendant Nomad, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.